It's 2026, and the traditional ways of preparing students for the academic job market, they're out the door. If you're a dean, if you're a department chair, or if you're a director of graduate studies, the time to help your students pivot is now. As you know, there have always been far more people looking for academic jobs than there are academic jobs. More than a decade ago, researchers actually did some work on this in engineering. And you know what they found? They've predicted that less than 13% of PhD earners in engineering would actually be able to secure a tenure-track position in their field in the US. In 2026, it has definitely not gotten better. We have a perfect storm of factors: state budget cuts, uncertainty at the federal level. All of those things have created one of the most uncertain academic job markets that we have seen in a very long time. Now, to be sure, a lot of these things vary across disciplines and there are exceptions, but I'm going to talk for an example about my own home discipline of economics, which has traditionally had a stronger job market compared to fields like history. And no, this is not me knocking history. I love you historians. Y'all just have fewer jobs. But if we look at the data on the Jobs for Economists website, we can see that jobs have really dropped off in terms of the number. And if we break it apart, academic jobs have decreased by a third since last year. A third. That is huge. And so while this job market is really uncertain, there are strategies that we can use to make sure that your students remain more competitive. And that's what I'll be sharing in this video today. I'm sharing with you the strategies that I'm using with my mentees, with my clients, to make sure that they are competitive in today's tough academic job market. And if you use these, you can help stabilize or even increase your job placement rates because you will have a better system. First, scientific storytelling is in, talking at people is out. The traditional way of preparing is explaining your research in a way that very few people can understand. It's like niche of niche, right? Often early career scholars tend to confuse complexity with importance. They use big words and concepts that nobody understands because they feel insecure about their work. And when I survey faculty members about their problems with job market candidates, that is one of the first things that comes up. They say this person cannot communicate the big picture of their work. They cannot tell me why I should care about their work. And it matters because nobody likes being bored or shut out. Do you? I don't. And practically, if a student, a job market candidate, can't explain it to their peers, how are they going to explain these complex topics to their students in a classroom? Because their job will involve some teaching. Here's what I'm encouraging my clients and my mentees to do differently. Strategically incorporate scientific storytelling to get search committees invested in their own unique scientific contributions. Storytelling is the secret sauce for really being a standout in the job market. Humans love stories. Think about the tortoise and the hare. You know that story, right? Even if you haven't heard it in years, your mind probably goes to, oh, slow and steady wins the race, right? Storytelling allows job market candidates to make it clear why they are the best addition to the faculty, why they are a one of one, why they are so unique that that department does not want to miss out on them. Here's an example. I had a student in one of my job market talk workshops that studies foster care in their home country. I was like, oh, that seems kind of interesting, but not really hitting it yet. But then when I filtered their story through my framework, we were able to draw out why their work was so important. Understanding foster care in less resource countries, like where this student was from, helps us to better understand how we can make improvements here in the US. And importantly, it helped to draw out why this student was so uniquely positioned to talk about this work. They realized that they do this work because they had a best friend growing up that never liked going home because it was a terrible environment for them. And that inspired them to study foster care in their home country. Same research, completely different impact when they're interviewing and presenting on the job market. Now that we've talked about storytelling and its importance, let's talk about strategy 2. Diversify funding is in, federal funding only plans are out. Here's the old way. Traditionally, a lot of hiring departments are looking for people with plans to get federal funding, like the National Institutes of Health or the National Science Foundation. And this is especially true if you're in a school of medicine, if you're in a school of public health, engineering, etc. Well, look, NIH grants were already really hard to get. We know that a few years ago, the average age at getting your first big independent award was 42 to 43 years old. In 2026, this process has been completely upended. Millions of dollars have been rescinded for covering so-called controversial topics like gender, race, and disability. And even biologists who don't study those things are getting caught up in the chaos. That means going into an interview or job talk, if your student is only talking about federal funding as a strategy, they will appear as if they don't understand what's going on. Here's a new way, and what I'm telling my clients to do differently. Have your federal funding plans, absolutely. Have your K award application, have all those things ready, but also identify funders and grant opportunities that allow you to do your important work unhindered. So you're showing search committees that you've done in-depth research and you have not just a plan A, but plan B, C, and D. And you're showing flexibility and not rigidity. So what I do is I go over potential outlets and foundations with my clients and help them to develop a clear and affirmative strategy about why their work aligns with non-federal funders and what their strategy is getting those dollars and those resources. And that plan is anchored in their strengths and the value of their work. The result is, instead of being nervous about federal funding or other funding questions, they're showing that they're ready for the challenges ahead. And the translation, search committees know that they have their head on straight and that clients can handle what's going on. And here's the last one. 3, scenario mapping is in, trying to memorize answers is out. The traditional way, the old way, is for job market candidates to try to memorize answers to every question they could think of and hope for the best. This is the number one thing that students tell me makes them really, really nervous, and I have to be honest, it shows. As a search committee member, I see a lot of people crash and burn on this portion because they tend to stumble over these impromptu questions or deflect. To quote another colleague who will be anonymous, it makes them really annoyed when job market candidates don't answer questions directly or ask for clarification if the question is vague. Not good. Here's a new way, what I'm telling my clients to do. My clients do not memorize questions. We plan ahead. We review the types of questions that people could ask and plan for the scenarios under which they could be asked. Here's an example. One of the PhD students I was working with is studying a small and marginalized population, and they were worried that committees might critique their sample size without recognizing the value of their work. So we have a plan. We plan to talk about the challenges with reaching this population. We have a plan to talk about why nationally representative data aren't appropriate for studying this group and how they plan to build on their present work and create a research career that has a really important impact. What's the result? Instead of being constantly on the defensive, my clients are able to go on the offensive and show that they're ready to be independent tenure-track faculty on day one. Here's the thing, I have a little gift for you. I have the 2026 academic job market prescription. So deans, department chairs, directors of graduate studies, I'm giving you the same exact quiz that I give clients at universities and one-on-ones before my workshops to help them figure out where their strengths and opportunities lie. Not only am I going to give you the quiz, I'm giving you instructions on how to use it so that you can diagnose where your students are having challenges in getting a tenure track offer and really diagnose where your systems need work, more importantly. But if you want my strategy for building a system for job market success at your university, I'll break it down for you in the next video. No gatekeeping. See you there.